This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things, like if you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hey, I'm Amanda from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
In October 2019, Arlington, Texas was chosen to be the home of a new national museum, unlike any other. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a unique home of military history. The 100,000 square foot museum will house exhibits, archives, and artifacts relating to the 3,500 U.S. troops who have been awarded the medal, the nation's highest honor for valor in combat. The museum will have 31,000 square feet of galleries dedicated to U.S. troops who have received the award. The museum CEO, former Navy SEAL and NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, said the museum will focus on education as much as preservation. The building will have 5 areas dedicated to Medal of Honor winners from the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. The main gallery will be located in a central plaza under a 25,000 square foot slab of steel, which will appear to be suspended in midair. It will be supported by 5 pillars. Black Rifle Coffee is a corporate sponsor of the museum, as are the Dallas Cowboys. The museum's board also includes over a dozen major corporations and 6 Medal of Honor recipients, including David Bellavia, Patrick Brady, and Britt Slabinski. Army Staff Sergeant Bellavia was awarded the medal for clearing an entire house by himself on November 10, 2004, as a squad leader in support of Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq. He killed 4 enemy fighters and wounded a 5th in close quarters battle. Army Major General Brady flew and coordinated the evacuation of 51 seriously wounded men during a firefight in Vietnam in January 1968. Slabinski, a Navy SEAL chief and team leader, led a rescue team of SEALs during Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan in March 2002. Slabinski and his team flew to a mountaintop ambush site to rescue Petty Officer First Class Neil Roberts, who had fallen from the back of a helicopter. Slabinski led the team through almost constant combat against an entrenched Taliban force. Along with the board members, former presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama serve as honorary directors. The museum is expected to open to the public in late 2024.
All right. Welcome back.
MisFitNation. The MisFitNation Show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, are starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the MisFitNation
Show.
Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the MisFitNation Show, your Thursday after dinner show. Tonight we're coming from Indiana, Edinburgh, Indiana. Again in Indiana. I need to get me a timeshare here. I've been here a lot this year. Just probably my 5th trip to Indiana this year, and over, I'd say, 50-something days in this state, training America's warriors to go fight our wars or stay out of harm's way, per se. Tonight, we have a great guest. He started his global company by selling T-shirts out of his trunk, as a trunk of his car behind a gym in 2011. He is passionate about how we can leverage healthy competition to create more winning results in our professional and personal lives. Today, he is the Chief Encouragement Officer at Compete Every Day and a leadership performance speaker who travels the world helping leaders to create a competitive advantage by becoming more resilient, productive, and impactful within their organizations. His clients include Deloitte, the Dallas Cowboys, Titleist, Golf, FootJoy, and more. So please give a great MisFitNation welcome to Jake Thompson. Welcome, Jake.
What's going on? Glad to be here tonight. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome having you here. I was starting to worry you weren't going to make it. Then I seen you pop in just at the last second, so it was awesome.
Here, ready to roll.
Outstanding, brother. And you're one of the first people that I've ever purchased an item from their company that ever reached out to me and said, hey, thank you for being part of this and being part of our organization. Thank you for supporting us, and what can I do for you? And right away I said, be on my show. And you said yes right away, and that was outstanding. So thank you, Jake, for doing that.
Dude, of course. I'm all about, man. It always means a lot, even if, it's a shirt, a book, whatever. A lot of people don't think twice about those things when they purchase them. But for the person, that created them, or my team had a huge hand in it, every one means a big deal to me, because I remember slinging them out of the back of my car, wondering what the heck I'd gotten myself into. So honored to be here. Excited to spend some time with you this evening, and hopefully adding a little value to our listeners today.
Outstanding, Jake. And I just gave basically a 2-sentence introduction of you based off your bio. If you don't mind, tell us a little more about you, from as far back as you want to go to how we got to 2011, selling those shirts out of your trunk to where we are now.
Yeah. So live in the DFW area, happily married to my wife, Elena. I am a dog dad to some rescue dogs that we love dearly, a boxer and some French bulldogs. Man, and I love every day waking up, getting to be the Chief Encouragement Officer at Compete Every Day. It's something I never thought I'd do. I grew up about 2 hours east of Dallas, for anybody familiar with East Texas in that 903 area. I grew up in Jacksonville. Thought growing up I was going to be Jerry Maguire, man. I had big dreams of a sports career, being around the game. Grew up working at my dad's gas station. My mom was an elementary school teacher. My dad had a pair of gas stations in our small East Texas town. And so, like anybody listening that grew up in a family business, man, you're free labor at a young age. And so that's what I grew up learning how to work, learning leadership skills and things that I didn't know I needed, didn't understand as well at the time. Had an opportunity kind of years later. I got out of grad school, realized that agent life was not what I wanted to do. It was 2008. And I struggled getting a job. I had an MBA at the time. I had a very non-traditional work experience. And in 2008, in the recession, nobody's really hiring. And if they were, you had to fit the cookie cutter mold. And that was not me. So I ended up freelancing project after project, from marketing strategy to some basic graphic design for people. Started to build a pretty good consulting practice, but I was really unfulfilled with the work. And along that way, I started changing who I was. I was trying to change my life. I found myself in this rut of just unhappiness, right? I was accumulating things, but living without a purpose, for lack of a better phrase. And I read a book by a guy named Donald Miller called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. And it challenged me about the story I was living, the purpose I needed to pursue. And as I started chasing it, this really concept of competing every day with yourself started to resonate, started to stick. As I talked to people, more and more people, I could see, hey, this person's competing to be the first person in their family to do this. This person is just competing to reach their goal. This person's competing to build a business. Everybody had something different they were competing for. And as I had those conversations, I thought, man, maybe there's something here. And so I was blessed and fortunate that my best friend kind of pushed and prodded me after some failed attempts to do something with the message. He said, hey, you should try t-shirts. He said, there's a company out of Boston called Life is Good. 3 simple words. They've got this brand. It's huge. In 2011, he's like, why don't you try that? And so I had some money set aside for a trip. He and I were going to take a guy's trip. He ends up spending it on an engagement ring for his now wife. So I can't fault him too much. But instead of taking that trip solo, I threw it into a few boxes of shirts and tanks, started selling them out of the trunk of my car with this compete everyday message. And then the journey began.
That's outstanding. And I think the shirts we bought were beat yesterday. Me and my wife bought a shirt each. She wore hers to work. She's a teacher, a 6th grade teacher now.
Love it.
And the first day she walked in with that shirt, her admin said, that's an awesome shirt. I need to get one too. That's what we need to lead to do. Beat yesterday here in the school, not just for us, but for these children, so they have a better tomorrow. And
love it.
I said that's what it's all about right there. So your shirts are making a difference. Maybe you don't see it from the level where you're at, but from the sky level where people are wearing it, I think it's awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And it's always helpful and encouraging to hear it at the school level, right? Because I was sharing this on Monday night. We're filming this mid-September. I've been in Tennessee all week. And so I was in Nashville with a corporate client, but I flew up 2 days early to go spend time at a really small NAI school and their athletes. And we just got to talking and I was like, hey, listen, like this is a passion project, high school, college, like that, middle school, even like if I can go speak to them, like I just want to find the opportunity to do it because my mom was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. Nice. And I always think like, man, if I'd known then some of the stuff I know now, if I had the mentality of, man, chase excellence every day instead of trying to win popularity contests, like how different life would have been for me. And so I love that hearing how your wife is using that message to encourage those kids of like, don't worry about anybody else. Just be better than your best yesterday, because that's at the end of the day, that's what matters. That's the most fulfilling journey. It's the most gratifying work because it guarantees that you grow and you don't get caught up in the rat race that society does of comparing yourself to everyone else.
Definitely. And I think that's something a lot of people do these days is they try to chase what other people are doing instead of chasing what is good for all. And I think if we get out of that mindset and start looking at the good of the whole instead of the good of the me, we'd be awesome.
100%. 100%.
And if you were in Nashville, I live 40 minutes from there. I wish I knew you were there.
Hey, next time I'm there often. I'm there often. So are you north, south, east, or west?
Northwest.
Okay, so northwest. I was opposite direction, south down in Pulaski.
Yeah,
but I'm in Nashville often, so we'll link up next time I'm in town.
Yeah, Nashville's a hop, skip, and a jump for me. Right down I take the back roads, don't even take the highway. So
highway traffic there is about as bad as it is here in Dallas, I will say.
It's pretty horrible. At least Dallas, they know to drive in the right lane to go fast.
Don't give us too much credit. Don't give us too much credit.
Here in Tennessee, it's a little weird because we have everyone coming through there, and it's wild, and it's not wide enough right now. It needs to get wider as we grow. Can you hear me still there?
Yep, Jake? I got you now. I lost you for a minute.
All right. So I just finished reading Lead Better Now. I think Lead Better today. Yeah, I just finished that. Lead Better Now. I did the audiobook so I can, as I drive to work now, my goal is not to listen to radio. I listen to books. And Yours was my last book I listened to. It was outstanding. Tell the audience a little more about Lead Better Now and what led you to do that, to do the project of Lead Better Now.
Yeah. So to give everyone some context, my first book, Compete Every Day, came out in 2020. And there's honestly, like, I could lie and say, man, I had grand visions, but really I was early on in my speaking career and I was losing opportunities to get on stage and encourage and help people. And I had event planners tell me, hey, we love your message. We think you'd be great for the event. We just want somebody with a book. We want somebody that we can put something in somebody's hands so that they leave and can continue learning. And I thought, okay, game on. I'll see you next year. And so I hunkered down, wrote the first book, which was in a journey in and of itself. But that first book was really 7 key choices that are simple on the surface, but difficult to execute, because we know the things that seem simple are not commonly applied. The ideas of your effort is more important than your talent. Your consistency and discipline matter more than what talent you don't control that you have. Always doing your best, things like that. And so that book started to take me on a really fun journey. But as I was going, writing book 2 was really one that I was stuck on. I have notes on my computer of book concepts and what I want to write and ideas I have, but getting them written is really where the challenge comes in. And for me, I got stuck for a few years of what the next book was. And I pushed it off. I'd start working on it a little bit, kind of be stuck. And I was just nothing that I was like, man, this is the topic. And as I opened that book, I share a story when my wife walked in one day, really upset. She works in the real estate space, similar to Tennessee. Here in Texas, everybody and their mother moved here during the pandemic. And so their business was thriving. And she got put into a leadership role. And at the time, it's like a lot of us experience, right? You get promoted. It's, man, head down and go. Like, there is no time to train you on how to manage, on how to lead. And she was just really upset in that moment because she hadn't been trained on how to manage and lead by the person that she used to report to. And now she was having to. And as the market slowed in 21, 22, she started realizing, like, there's so many things I don't know about leadership. And she felt overwhelmed, like every new manager does, every new leader does, because you're not equipped with the skills necessary to thrive. And a lot of us that are high achieving performers don't understand initially it's a different skill set to lead. And so when she comes in my office and she tells me this, and we're sitting here talking about it, I'm like, you're not the only one. Like, I kind of chuckled during this moment, but I was telling her, I was like, what do you think I go do on a plane every week? Like, this is what I go teach. This is what we go talk about. Is how do you lead? How do you lead yourself? How do you lead? How do you help connect and build up other people? And once she walked out, I thought, this is the book. Like, this is the next book. And as I was telling someone earlier today, I've got a bookshelves behind me. So if you're listening to this, I mean, I've got 2 bookshelves behind me loaded down. I got another one upstairs of books. I hope to read them in my lifetime, probably never will, but there's tons of leadership books. And there's some phenomenal leadership speakers, coaches, and authors out there. But what I found in a lot of them is a lot of it's very high level. You know, you got to cast this clear vision and you got to motivate your people. And it's things that you need to do over the course of your career to be an effective leader. You got to be clear at how you communicate your vision and things like that. But when someone's drowning, for lack of a better phrase, they just need a life jacket. They don't need somebody in the water telling them, well, if you just did this. And so when I wrote this book, it was really for that individual who's been leading, who just has gotten to the point of like, screw this, I don't want to do it anymore. Or the person who is new to the role and is like, man, I got something in me. I want to make an impact. I just don't know what to do. And so the book very clearly breaks 3 pieces. And if you read the first book has application, but it's more mindset focused. Like, let's shift our mindset around these things. Lead Better Now is a little bit of mindset shift, but it's a lot of practical. Here's what you got to do. Here's how you got to compete with yourself to manage your time. Here's how you got to change how you talk to yourself and your team. Here's how you got to connect with your people. Because until you get to know them, you can't build trust with them. And if you can't build trust, you can't lead them effectively. And then last, how do you give feedback? We know from multiple research studies, especially done the last 4 years, that there's a massive void in feedback and appreciation in the workplace. And I think a lot of people only hear from their manager. They only get feedback when they do something wrong. And therefore, they continue to have this negative association with work and with their boss, because the only time they get feedback is when they do something wrong, versus you should be doing when you get stuff right. It's like sports, right? Your coach is going to tell you when you make a great play, when everything works out, just as much as they're going to get on you when something goes wrong. And so the book really is like, hey, listen, here's a very practical guide as you step into a leadership role from a performer role, how to lead yourself, how to connect and get to know your people, and then how to really give them feedback and communicate with them.
Definitely. And listening to the book, having led in the Army for 22 years, you learn that in the Army, you're thrust into a leadership role at a very young age. A lot of us became leaders at 19, maybe 20, and then you lead from that point on. There's no book that really tells you how to lead. You have to learn really on the fly. And listening to your book really was all the lessons that I learned on that fly for 22 years. So good job in writing that the way you did.
I want to commend you on that, because, you know, a lot of what we see is the control standpoint, right? Command and control. And there's a huge need in certain points. I had this conversation with a lot of my construction clients. Like, when you're on the job site, the old school, like, do what I say, when I say it, how I say it, immediately type of response is required, because there is safety. There are issues at risk. What happens is we don't flip the switch when we're not on the job site of how do we coach people. And so when you're saying this right here of, man, I learned a lot of that stuff, I got to see that you are someone who I find in a very unique position, which is awesome. And I would imagine why it influences your podcast and all the work you're doing, because most of us aren't given that environment to learn a lot of that stuff, or we just learn by watching someone else do it poorly, right?
Definitely. There's always lessons learned by someone else that help you out along the way. For me, I started my career pre 9/11. So pre 9/11, there was a different mindset and leadership in the military. And it was more that do as I say, or you're going to get this, or this is going to happen to you. And then after 9/11, there was a shift, because we all went to this thing called war, and you relied on those people that you were telling you need to do this or this will happen. Now you have to say, we need to do this or this will happen, because we all had to rely on each other to bring each other home and make sure everything worked well. And learning to adapt to each person as a human, not as just a number, was something that I learned on the fly. And it took a lot of my former soldiers, it took them by surprise that I changed my leadership style along the way, because I learned to adapt to the time. And that's something a lot of leaders need to learn to do as they evolve as leaders, to adapt and adjust to what's going on in the world and with their people.
100%. I mean, that's setting aside the ego, saying, hey, listen, my ideas have changed. Like, how I'm approaching this has changed. And that's a good thing, because it means I've grown. And there's so many times that leaders get stuck with how they've always done it. You know, I had an executive coaching client for years who would tell me, you know, a tiger can't change his stripes. And I'm like, yeah, he can. And it's been funny, because I've gotten to witness it, and I've witnessed his change, and it's been slow and it's been small, but he's a different individual now than he was. And so it's that idea of being willing to say, hey, what I did, maybe it worked well then, but is there a better way now? And how do I find and explore it? And so I love hearing that from you. And I think that's something I wanted to just echo, because it's so important for the listeners. Be willing to be someone different 4 years from now, 5 years from now than you were yesterday, because it means you're growing and improving versus staying the exact same way the whole time.
And I think this goes back to the shirt, beat yesterday. Yesterday, I might have did awesome yesterday leading you, but today I have to still lead you. And we as a team need to succeed today. So every day you got to beat yesterday and stack those victories as you go. So you 100%. Do have to evolve. And as a young leader, I didn't know that. But as I evolved as a human and as a leader, I understood that and learned that. And surrounding yourself with awesome humans and awesome people that can do great tasks really helps out.
Absolutely. Yeah. That whole key piece, right? Surround yourself with the right people. That changes everything.
So I think I seen a new shirt for you this week, I think popped up on social media. It was outside the grain or something. I couldn't.
Yeah, the go against the grain.
Go
Yeah,
against
that's been something we've been really toying with. You know, if you've watched, for those that are familiar, over the last couple of months, we've really leaned in on the Theodore Roosevelt quote, "The man in the arena," for a couple of reasons. One, it's been my favorite quote for years, and it's really been something I've applied, of the idea that in life, man, there's only a handful of people on the field. There's only those that are willing to risk something, to go after big goals, to get beat up and keep going. And at the end of the day, their place is better than the quote cold and timid souls on the stands and in the sidelines. And so we've really played this game of do what most people don't do to get the results that most people wish they had. And so we followed up kind of the arena shirt with really that one that the front just says do what most won't, and the back is go against the grain. Do what most people don't do, because if you look at society, like that is the formula for success. And I hate to say that, because it is the case. So if you look at the masses, right? We overweight, we're depressed, we're highly medicated, we're massively in debt. We are unfulfilled in the work we do, because mainly we're pursuing selfish pursuits versus how can I do what I do and help others. We're not happy. And the reason we're not happy is because we keep chasing what's easy instead of understanding fulfillment and purpose comes from overcoming what's difficult. And so we really wanted this shirt message to just be the idea that, hey, when you see the crowd and the flow going one direction, before you get caught up in the rush, say, is this actually the right place for me? And because I feel like if more of us bought into the idea of doing something different than what most people do, more of us would be excited about the results we create in our careers, our relationships, and our lives.
100%. And I think the buy-in comes not just from those who you're leading, and you have to buy in on what you're selling. You have to understand what you're leading with. And if you don't do that, how can you expect anyone that's under that you lead to follow you? And that's something I think all leaders need to understand, that you may have a title. That title only goes so far. If you can't lead by example and lead with purpose, you're going to lose everyone below you.
100%. My dad taught me when I was in the gas station, I wrote about it in the book, that you're either an example of what it is to follow, like you're an example of excellence and a leader of someone to follow, or you're a lesson of someone to avoid. And every day our actions are painting that picture. And as leaders, the lowest behavior we allow, the worst thing that we let people get by, the worst thing that we do becomes the standard and benchmark for everyone else. And so if we're the leader who, hey, every Friday I'm cutting out at 3:00 to go to happy hour, go play golf, but you guys got to stay and work till 5, like eventually the team's out the door. Like they're leaving at 3:00 too because you're doing it, or they've completely lost all trust and respect for you and they're out, because it can't be do as I say, not as I do, because our walk always talks louder than our talk ever will.
Oh, exactly. And if people start to realize that, from not even just from corporate or military, from our governmental leaders, if they start to understand that, things might change a lot quicker in this country, go back to the way we should be, and be a strong country, a united country, without all that political divide that we have right now. And I think people like yourself and maybe my team here at the Misfit Nation can get together and hopefully pursue that change.
Yeah. No, and we actually, it's funny, I was having that conversation this week with folks, and two of my best friends sit on a completely other side of the political aisle from me. My in-laws do too, as we laugh. But it's the idea of, can we come together and have conversations? Do we care at the end of the day about how do we just make America like better? How do you continue to grow? How do you develop? How do you not get caught up in essentially the distraction, right? The politicians know the game. They know the game is to distract you and get you to hate them, whoever them is, versus, hey, what are we doing to help build each other up? What are we doing to improve? What are we doing to get better every day? Which is why I'm all for term limits on all of them, right? Get them out after a limited time. But I also think and I tell people this, and I tend to get pushback as I chuckle, kind of laugh it off. But I'm like, if you wake up this year on November 5th, whoever is elected, there's going to be things that influence your life knowing how our government's structured. You also have the House, you have Senate. There's other pieces that come into play. But at the end of the day, the most change, the most impact on your life is going to be the person you see in the mirror.
Yep.
And when you stop being a victim to what's going on outside of your control, and you start owning your actions and how you show up and how you respond to those, then you start to notice a difference in how your community is and how your relationships are. And I've just really struggled I've really struggled to see people that have great success in life that are always the victim. And there's a few that might have a few runs here and there and they get popular, but do they last? And it's typically the people who say, I'm going to be the victor of my situation. And some people may have devastatingly hard situations and they still decide to be the victor. And there's people that have easier situations and they still decide to be the victor. But that's it. And if we can get all together, Misfit Nation, compete every day. If we can just get people to say, hey, listen, start owning your actions, start owning your situation. Whatever you did before today, you can't change that. Own where you are and then own how you change it tomorrow, and quit waiting on a politician or a lottery ticket or whatever else to change your life.
Lottery ticket.
And you will be amazed what can happen over the next few years.
Definitely. And in my book, 13-Step Guide to Success, I wrote that it starts with you. It starts with
Always.
You. Fix your house first. If you can fix your house first, then spread it to your neighborhood, then your community, then your city. That's where you need to start that change right there. You can't control what happens at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's too far above what you live at. You need to start where you live, grow that grassroots project right there, and make things better from that point and move out from there. If you can spread it from there, get that momentum growing, everything will work out in the end.
Oh man. And even if, say, you never get past your neighborhood, your community, the entire experience will change in your neighborhood, your community, and your relationships if that's your approach. Like if that's where it stops, which it doesn't, right? There's a ripple effect. But even if that's where it stops, those are the people you see every day. Those are the people you interact with every day. It'll change that dynamic completely. And so, yeah, I love that because it does. It starts at home.
Yes, 100%. And we got a couple question and a comment from
both
from my Tuesday crew. How can we coach our children better to go against the grain when society wants everyone lockstep and to shut up and color?
Yeah, man, this is hard, right? This is hard because your kids are getting hit from every angle.
Yes.
And I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say is I am not a parent. One of the reasons we have a Raising Competitors podcast, we did about 50 episodes a few years ago, was because I wanted to have conversations with people who were parents and worked with parents. Because I'm fascinated with what's going on in the youth game. And so a couple of things on my end, and then a couple of resources for you as well. So the first thing I would say in terms of going against the grain is rewarded behavior is repeated behavior. And so the more we catch our kids making decisions that are a little bit different, the harder we got to praise them. The harder we got to pour. Even the simple, like even doing the things you're supposed to do. Like if you're like, yeah, I remember I was a kid, right? My mom was a teacher. My parents expected me to make A's in high school. Like they expected that. And so eventually you get to a point where like that's expected and hey, good job, but it's not a big deal, right? But it's a big deal if I get a B or a C. For us, we got to continue to praise the things that are in kids' controls that start to separate that. We have to let them struggle, which I think is the big one, right? And talk about that process, that struggle. Hey, you didn't make the starting lineup this year. I know you want to quit, but you're not quitting. Like you're going to write it out. That was a lesson I learned as a kid. Like you're writing out the season. At the end of the season, let's talk about it. But we have to learn to work through some of those difficult situations. And so for me, man, the first thing I'll just say is like, it's the more encouragement and praise you can pour into the kid when they make those decisions, the more times you can ask them, hey, noticed you did this. Tell me what your thoughts were. Like, I'm not judging. I'm just curious, like, why did you decide to do this? Like, I'd love to know that. Being curious in that aspect is really helpful. There's a couple of books here on my shelf that I'm getting ready to dive into, and there's one that I have. So the first is called The Anxious Generation. It's by Jonathan Haidt. I think he was one of the co-authors of The Coddling of the American Mind with Greg. I think Lukianoff is his last name. The second one is Bad Therapy by Abigail Schreier. And it's around the idea that we've really isolated our kids from struggle. And so the majority of kids that your kid is around probably is not dealing with some of the same struggles in that. The third one is actually sitting in my car because I'm giving it to a buddy, and it's called Nurture Shock. It's by Ashley Merriman and Poe Bronson, two of my favorite authors. But it's a lot of things that we tend to hear from a parenting, from a praise standpoint, and really what the research shows. And so it's super helpful. They talk a lot about growth mindset and fixed mindset, Carol Dweck's work. And so I'd highly, highly recommend those resources as well. And just remember, like, the more you praise a behavior that's 100% in control, the more likely that behavior is going to be repeated.
Outstanding. And Jake says, thank you already for the answer. He's pretty quick on
You
that.
bet.
He's sitting not far from me in the hotel room, so he's listening live. His teammate on Tuesday Crew said he manages retail. He scrubs the bathroom regularly because it proves to employees that I do what they do, and it makes us a team.
Dude, I love that. I love it. So it's funny. I'd grown up in a gas station, right? What's the most important thing for a gas station? It's not the gas prices. It's not how good your sodas and Cokes are inside. It's how clean your bathrooms are.
Yes.
Anybody that's been through Texas, Buc-ee's, right?
Yes.
Buc-ee's billboards everywhere bragging about the bathrooms because it's that attention. If the bathroom is clean, everything else in the store is going to be good. Like, you just know it. So I love seeing that. I love that you're doing it because it's that moment. My dad taught me the same thing, right? You jump in and show, hey, I'm willing to do the things I'm asking you to do. I'm not above it. I'm asking you because this is your role in the team, but like, I'm going to step in and help. So I love seeing that.
Definitely. And I think today, as me and Jake were driving up to Indiana, he broke his Buc-ee's cherry. He got to go to Buc-ee's for the first time. And I told him as we're going in there, I said, they're the cleanest bathrooms you'll ever see anywhere in the world. And
most overwhelming gas station you'll ever go in, but absolutely.
It's like a mini Walmart plus gas station. It's kind of crazy. It's awesome. I think it's amazing what they do, and their business model is outstanding. But I told him the bathroom story, and he had to go in and check it out, and he concurred right away.
I'm telling you, it is worth the stop and dealing with 100 gas pumps and a million people, because anybody that's been on the road, it's Russian roulette sometimes with the gas station bathroom. So, Buc-ee's is always a safe bet.
It is. And I mean, at the pump, it tells you how much they pay that person inside the bathroom to clean it. It's $20 an hour. That's pretty, and they pay all their employees pretty well, I believe, based off what they're advertising. So that's not a bad place to work, I believe, if that's where you want to start at. So they're doing the right thing. They figured it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
From X, we have at Leap to Be said, how do we convince others to see that there are better ways to do things in order to succeed?
First step's always modeling it, right? You've got to model that behavior to show them, because people aren't inspired to change their behavior unless they see something different. And so the one thing we just talked about, you got to lead at home first, but it starts with leading yourself, because people are never inspired to change by seeing the same behavior elsewhere. So you got to do different, be different. You start to get different. That gives you opportunities to ask, to build relationships, to talk to people, say, hey, what do you want to do? Like, you see, I'm doing things differently. Here's why. It's the best. The second thing you got to realize is, my friend Troy Sacco always says this: you can't motivate anybody. Right? We can't motivate anybody. So what's our responsibility? Is to live a life that inspires them to change, and then be willing to have the conversations and give them feedback and opportunities to improve. I think that's a big piece of it, right? So if we're living it and we want to see more out of others, we got to get to know people. Like, what's their drive? Why are they doing certain things? Can we connect those dots with them? In the book, we talk about the kind of what, why, how that every leader should be pouring into their team. It's essentially like, what's my role? How do I not get fired? Everybody knows this. Why does the work I do matter? Because a lot of people are just doing a job and they don't understand how it matters to the team, how it matters to the customer, the big picture. It's the job, right? I'm working on the widget. I'm doing this. I'm answering phones, like, no big deal. So we have to connect that dot. And then the third is what takes the most work. And it's saying, hey, how does what I do today help me get to where I ultimately want to go? And that requires a leader to get to know their people, because they've got to understand where you're trying to get to. What are the goals you're trying to achieve? Career, financial, family, like, what do you want to do? And then how can I creatively figure out what's the work you're doing today? What's the skills you're going to build? And how does that help you down the line? And I think that's one that helps start to motivate people, because what it does is it helps them start to reveal, here's why what I'm doing is helping me get to where I want to go, so I can take more pride in it. I can be more empowered in the work I do every day. But that starts with us, right? You lead it, you live it first. Then you start to have these conversations to help people connect the dots, or you help connect the dots for them of where they want to go and how this can help them get there.
Exactly. Outstanding. And hopefully they understood that as they wrote those questions and come forward. And we have another question from X now. It's from I am the chunk at X. How do we know when it is time to leave an organization with leadership that does not truly support us?
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? We know there's a fight for talent in a ton of industries, and we know the competitive advantage is in the companies that are willing to develop their people. The couple of the questions I have always come up of, right, is it the person I report to that doesn't want to train me, or perhaps do they not know how? Sometimes some of us are working for somebody, we're reporting to a manager who, like us, was promoted, was not trained, and they don't know how to do it. And so they're just doing the best that they can because they don't know any better, right? That's very different from someone who says, well, I'm not going to make the investment in you to develop you. If you want to get better, do it yourself, go somewhere else. Two totally different, right? Ignorance versus intentionality. So it's understanding the difference in those. Understanding of, hey, how am I showing up every day? And this is the big one. If you have people that report to you, even if the people above you are not developing you and maybe the culture is a little toxic, you still control the culture of the people that report to you in that mini team. And it's your responsibility to own what that culture looks like. And I've seen guys in terrible overall company cultures that have a great mini team environment and culture. And then finally get to a point of saying, like, hey, are there opportunities for me to grow? Is the person above who I report to someone who's developing people? Are they growing people? Or is everyone up the chain just content to go through the motions? And if so, and I'm someone who wants to grow and climb and get better, I need to find another opportunity. What we hope we do is exhaust the opportunities of, is it just because they don't know how to develop me, not that they don't want to? If they don't want to, where can I go into an environment that they can? And during this whole process, how can I make sure I take 100% ownership of the people that report to me and that work alongside me, so I'm always pouring into them?
Definitely. Pouring into a company that doesn't really support you really drags you down. And like you said, the talent pool right now is out there. And a lot of people, after coming out of the fog of COVID, stopped wanting to actually go to work, and they got too comfortable or complacent, I guess, with I can work from my house and I can get this higher paying job just working from my house, wearing my pajamas and not talking to anybody. But I think as we move forward, we need to get out of that mindset. And yes, you can be mobile. You can be a mobile employee. You can be a mobile worker. You can have a mobile workplace. Like for you, you went to Nashville this week. You were able to influence some minds there, and then you went home and you went back to your home base to start the next project. Me and Jake were on the road to Indiana this week to do the same thing. We're influencing others to make sure that they have the tools they need to be successful at their next mission. How do we instill this in the rest of our country, the rest of the world, really, that you need to get out and be somebody now and start to lead from the front?
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
You lead yourself and live in a way that gets other people to ask questions what you're doing differently. Because that's the whole thing. The whole goal is, how do I start a conversation with someone who's not doing it? How can I get them to ask a question because they see how I live or the results I achieve? How can I take that question to build a relationship, to pour into them, to figure out where their passions are and help them? And you just do it one person at a time. And eventually that ripple effect goes and you don't ever see the outcome of it. You don't ever see the full effect, but that's all it is. And if we all woke up every day and just said, two questions, right? How am I beating my yesterday?
Yep.
How am I going to show up and compete today? And then what am I doing to make sure I'm modeling a standard of excellence instead of modeling a standard of average? It would start to be a better place. We'd start to have different conversations. We'd start to get different outcomes, and we start to have a different kind of impact.
Definitely. And I think if we all start thinking on that level, that mindset, we all will do better in whatever venture we do, and not to mention to help our own society be better.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So, John, right now, Jake, you have Compete Every Day. You have JakeThompson.com. You got your books. You got two books plus your journal. What is next for you?
So we've got CompeteEveryday.com is kind of the brand. Jake A. Thompson's the speaking website. Man, book 3's in the works. It's specifically written for that younger audience. So that person that was asking about their kids, I'm writing book 3 for high school and college athletes.
Nice.
Because I always get asked after keynotes, like, what do you have for my kid? And I want to be able to pour into that younger audience, even though I spend most of my time speaking in the corporate space, associations, business owners. And so I want to find a way to pour into them. So that's next. And then on the big docket, otherwise for us this year, we've got our very first conference is coming to Frisco, Texas, November 1st, Strive to Impact. I've got a few friends coming in from all over the country to speak. We've got a full day on building mental performance, leadership performance, so that you kind of walk out with a game plan to finish this year. And then 2025, it's a little more of the same, right? I'll get the third book out.
Nice.
We'll have a couple of digital courses and products dropping as well to be able to support leaders in the work that they do. But, it's the same goal as it was from day one. Looks a little bit different, but the goal is how do we help people learn how to compete every day and then start doing it? Because just like you, we want them to change their lives and then go change the lives of others.
Outstanding. Jake, what's the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I would say CompeteEveryday.com. You can email our team. It'll come straight to me through one of my teammates. And then I hang out primarily on social media on 2 channels. You'll find me on Instagram, Jake Thompson Speaks, pretty easy to find. And then LinkedIn, the same thing. It'll be linkedin.com/n/Jake Thompson Speaks. Drop me a note. Anybody listening today, if any of your questions that you dropped in we missed or I didn't answer fully, shoot me a note. Would love to follow up, add a little more context to that. And appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight.
Outstanding, Jake. And before I let you go, I need you to give the Misfit Nation 3 things they can start doing tomorrow to start to have better success in leading their people or leading from their level up.
Love it. Okay, so the first thing is going to be spending time getting to know your people. So take 10 to 15 minutes tomorrow, take 10 to 15 minutes next week, make that commitment once or twice a week for the rest of the year and just sit down and get to know your people. Everybody knows what their job is, what their name is. I want you to know who they are outside of work. If they like sports, what do they like to do outside of work? Do they have a family? What's their family like? Get to know the person because that's going to help you build trust with them. If they see that you care about who they are as an individual, it's going to make them better committed to the work that they're doing. So that's going to be number 1. Second thing is to get in the habit of calling out the good. Look for opportunities and times team members are doing the right thing or, quote, even just doing their job, and call it out. Don't make sure that the only time they hear from us is not just when things are bad, when they've messed up, when there's a mistake. So we get in the rhythm of getting to know our people. We get in the rhythm of calling out the good, of catching them doing it. And the third, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning we talked about, right? It starts in your house. I do an exercise every Friday. I'm going to challenge you to do the same. It's called Start, Stop, Continue. Take 5 minutes at the end of your Friday afternoon every week and ask yourself, what's the one thing I need to start doing next week I didn't do this week to be more successful? What's the one thing I need to stop doing next week that I did this week that's holding me back? And what's the one thing I'm doing well I need to continue doing? And if you ask yourself those 3 questions, what to start, what to stop, what to continue, week over week over week, you'll find that you compete with yourself every week. You set targets of where to grow and improve. And a year from now, the person you are is much different than the person you are today. And you'll be impressed by the influence you start to have on others when you pair that with getting to know them and then calling them out when you see good behavior.
Outstanding. Jake, thank you again for agreeing to come on after our short chat on LinkedIn. That was awesome. And thank you for all the advice you've given the audience tonight and all the feedback you've given. And keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome, the work you're doing right now. And hopefully we can collaborate more in the future.
Dude, appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate everybody being engaged tonight, dropping questions. Have fun as always, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding. Have a good night.
You too.
Hey, I'm Logan. I'm a sergeant first class in the Army, and I've been lucky enough to secure one of the charity slots provided by the Lifetime Foundation for next year's Leadville 100. In order to do this, I'm looking to raise around $2,800 over the course of the next year to donate to the Lifetime Foundation. A lot of their focus is on youth movement and nutrition and conservation, among other things. And it's a really great cause, and I appreciate any help that you guys could give. And a little bit goes a long way and it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
This is a message from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Got a question about your VA benefits, healthcare, or eligibility? Go to va.gov, where you can access a new interactive chatbot to ask questions 24/7. One can still browse va.gov for information, but you can now ask specific questions to the chatbot, like what's the PACT Act? How do I apply for disability benefits? What's my claim status? You can access the new feature through va.gov's Contact Us page. Then click on the Start Chat button. The chatbot will continue to improve veterans' access to information about the benefits and services they've earned. This is one way VA is offering seamless and secure access to its online resources.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.